The crying started 3 rows ahead, a piercing wail that cut through the cabin pressure like a knife. Zane Kelly winced, not from annoyance but from empathy. As a single father to 4-year-old Emma, he knew that sound all too well. The inconsolable cry of an overtired child trapped in a metal tube at 30,000 feet. He watched as passengers around him shifted uncomfortably, some shooting irritated glances toward the source of the noise. A few pulled headphones tighter over their ears. The flight attendant hovered anxiously in the aisle, clearly torn between intervention and protocol. The crying intensified, and Zane could make out a woman's voice, desperate and hushed, trying to soothe the child. "Please, honey, please stop crying. We'll be there soon." Zane hesitated. It wasn't his business, yet something about the mother's strained voice resonated with him. He remembered his own first flight with Emma, the way panic had set in when she wouldn't stop crying, the helplessness that threatened to drown him. "Emma," he said softly to his daughter who sat beside him, engrossed in her coloring book. "I'm going to help someone, okay? Stay here and keep coloring. I'll be right back." Emma nodded solemnly, clutching her pink crayon tighter. "Are you going to help the crying baby, Daddy?" "Yes, sweetheart." "Just for a minute." Zane unbuckled his seatbelt and made his way forward, aware of the grateful glances from other passengers. As he approached the source of the distress, he saw them a stunning woman in a tailored blazer desperately bouncing a red-faced toddler on her knee. The woman's expertly applied makeup couldn't hide the exhaustion in her eyes, and her manicured fingers trembled as she tried to offer a sippy cup to the screaming child. "Excuse me," Zane said, keeping his voice gentle. "I couldn't help but notice you might need a hand." "I'm a dad, and I've been where you are." The woman looked up, initial wariness quickly giving way to desperate relief. Tears pooled in her eyes, a rich, deep brown that caught Zane off guard. "I've tried everything," she whispered, her voice breaking. "He won't stop. I don't know what to do anymore." "May I?" Zane asked, gesturing to the empty seat beside her. She nodded, and Zane settled next to them. The little boy Zane guessed around 2 years old continued to wail, his face flushed and tear-streaked. "Hey, buddy," Zane said, his voice taking on the special tone he used when Emma was upset. "Flying's pretty scary, huh?" The toddler hiccuped mid-cry, momentarily distracted by the new voice. "I'm Zane," he said, addressing both mother and child, "and this little guy is..." "Max," the woman supplied, pushing a strand of hair from her face. "I'm Tessa, Tessa Valdez." "Nice to meet you both," Zane said, reaching into his pocket. "And Max, I have something that might help." He pulled out a small plastic container and popped it open, revealing a collection of tiny, colorful rubber animals, Emma's treasured tiny pets that had saved him on many occasions. "These are magic animals," Zane explained, selecting a blue elephant. "They help your ears feel better when you're way up high in the airplane." Max's crying subsided to whimpers as he eyed the toy curiously. "This elephant's name is Stompy," Zane continued, making the toy dance on his palm. "He loves to go on adventures, but sometimes his ears hurt too when he flies. Do you know what helps him?" Max shook his head, his crying now reduced to occasional hiccups. "He holds his trunk like this," Zane demonstrated by pinching his own nose gently, "and then he drinks some water." "Can you try that with me?" To Tessa's visible amazement, Max mimicked the action, pinching his nose with pudgy fingers while she held the sippy cup to his lips. "Good job," Zane praised as Max took a drink. "Now Stompy wants to know if he can sit with you during the flight. He gets scared too, and brave boys like you make him feel safe." Max reached for the elephant, clutching it to his chest with one hand while maintaining his grip on his mother's designer blouse with the other. "That's it," Zane encouraged softly. "Just like that." The cabin seemed to collectively exhale as Max's cries ceased completely, replaced by fascinated examination of the toy elephant. Tessa stared at Zane with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. "How did you do that?" she whispered, careful not to break the spell. Zane shrugged, a hint of a smile playing at his lips. "Practice. Plus, kids recognize when adults are genuinely trying to help rather than just trying to quiet them down. "Thank you," Tessa said, and Zane noticed the expensive watch on her wrist as she wiped away a stray tear. "I was at my wit's end. This is our third flight today, and thank you." "No problem at all," Zane replied, suddenly aware of his worn jeans and the coffee stain on his shirt cuff remnants of his rushed morning routine. "I have a 4-year-old. I've been through the trenches." A look of curiosity crossed Tessa's face. "Is your wife with you?" "Just my daughter, Emma," Zane answered, gesturing back to where Emma was now peering over her seat, watching the interaction with interest. "It's just the two of us." Understanding passed between them the silent recognition of solo parenting responsibilities. "I should get back," Zane said, rising from the seat. "Emma's probably wondering what's taking so long." "Wait," Tessa said, reaching into her purse. She extracted a business card and pressed it into his hand. "If Max could keep the elephant, I'd like to replace it, and maybe thank you properly." Zane glanced at the card. "Tessa Valdez, CEO, Valdez Innovations." A San Francisco address was embossed in elegant silver lettering. "The elephant is a gift," Zane said. "No replacement necessary." He made his way back to his seat, aware of Tessa's eyes following him down the aisle. "You helped the crying baby, Daddy?" Emma asked as he buckled back in. "I did. His name is Max, and he was sad because his ears hurt." "Did you give him Stompy?" Zane nodded, preparing for potential tears. "I did. Is that okay? He really needed him." Emma considered this seriously. "That's okay. Stompy will take care of him." Zane kissed the top of her head, marveling at his daughter's generous heart. He tucked the business card into his wallet without giving it another thought. After all, what would a CEO in a designer suit want with a struggling contractor from Portland who could barely afford this trip to visit his parents in San Francisco? The plane began its descent, and Zane focused on helping Emma gather her crayons. He didn't notice Tessa watching him from a few rows ahead, Max now sleeping peacefully in her arms, the blue elephant still clutched tightly in his hand. 2 days into their San Francisco visit, Zane found himself sitting on a bench at Golden Gate Park, watching Emma feed ducks with his mother. The December air was chilly but nothing compared to Portland's winter, and Emma was delighted by the relative warmth that allowed for park visits. "Zane Kelly." A familiar voice cut through his thoughts. "I thought that was you." Tessa Valdez stood before him, looking even more striking than she had on the plane. Her caramel-colored hair fell in loose waves around her shoulders, and her casual weekend attire designer jeans and a cashmere sweater still screamed wealth that Zane couldn't begin to comprehend. "Miss Valdez," he said, standing awkwardly. "What a surprise." "Tessa, please," she corrected with a warm smile. "And it is a surprise. I was just taking Max for some fresh air." She gestured to where a nanny was helping Max toddle toward a small play structure nearby. "I recognized your daughter's red hair. Hard to miss." Zane nodded, oddly touched that she'd remembered Emma. "She gets that from her mother." "I never properly thanked you," Tessa said, her expression softening. "You saved not just my sanity but everyone else's on that flight," Zane chuckled. "Happy to help. How's Max doing?" "Much better now that we're not trapped in a pressurized cabin, but he still won't part with that elephant. Takes it everywhere." Pride warmed Zane's chest. Emma was the same way at his age. A moment of comfortable silence stretched between them before Tessa spoke again. "I was actually hoping to run into you. I checked the name on your luggage tag on the flight Hope that's not too stalker-ish, and I tried calling, but the Portland number I found wasn't in service." Zane winced. "Had to switch to a cheaper plan last month. Budget cuts." Something in Tessa's expression shifted, not pity, which Zane would have hated, but understanding. "Well, I'm glad I found you," she continued. "I wanted to invite you and Emma to Max's birthday party tomorrow. Nothing extravagant, just a small gathering at my home." Zane raised an eyebrow skeptically, and Tessa laughed a genuine, melodic sound that made several nearby pigeons take flight. "Okay, it might be a little extravagant," she admitted, But Max would love to see Emma and I. She paused, a hint of vulnerability crossing her face. I could use an ally. Someone who won't spend the entire time networking or talking about stock options. There was something in her request that resonated with Zane, the loneliness beneath her composed exterior, so similar to what he often felt navigating parenthood alone. I don't exactly fit in with the Silicon Valley crowd, Zane warned, gesturing to his worn jacket and work boots. That's precisely why I want you there, Tessa replied with unexpected earnestness. Please, I'll text you the address. Before Zane could formulate a response, Emma came running over, her grandmother following at a more sedate pace. Daddy, the ducks ate all my bread, she announced, then noticed Tessa. Her eyes widened in recognition. You're the mommy from the airplane, Tessa crouched down to Emma's level. That's right, I'm Max's mom, and Max would really like you to come to his birthday party tomorrow. There'll be a bouncy castle and cake. Would you like that? Emma's eyes grew impossibly wider. A real bouncy castle, she turned to Zane, hands clasped in silent pleading. Zane looked from his daughter's hopeful face to Tessa's expectant one, then to his mother, who was watching the interaction with undisguised curiosity. We'd love to, he heard himself say, surprising even himself. The smile that lit up Tessa's face made something flip in Zane's chest. Wonderful, she said, pulling out her phone. Your number. As he recited his cell number, Zane tried to ignore his mother's knowing look and the way Emma was practically vibrating with excitement. See you tomorrow then, Tessa said, her fingers brushing his arm briefly before she walked away to collect Max. Well, Zane's mother said once Tessa was out of earshot. She seems nice. Mom, Zane warned, recognizing the matchmaking tone. What? I didn't say anything, she replied innocently, but her eyes twinkled. Though she is very pretty. And successful, judging by those shoes. We're just going to a kid's birthday party, Zane insisted, watching as Tessa lifted Max into her arms, the blue elephant dangling from his grip. Nothing more. If you say so, his mother said, patting his arm. But you might want to wear the blue button-down I bought you last Christmas. It brings out your eyes. Zane rolled his eyes but made a mental note to iron the shirt when they got back to his parents' house. The address Tessa texted led them to Pacific Heights, where mansions climbed the hills of San Francisco like monuments to success. Zane whistled low as their rideshare pulled up to a modern glass and stone structure with panoramic views of the bay. Is this a castle, Daddy? Emma whispered, her face pressed against the car window. Close enough, Zane murmured, suddenly acutely aware of the department store gift they'd purchased. He'd spent more than he could afford $40 on a set of wooden animals that Emma had insisted Max would love, but now, faced with the Valdez residence, it seemed woefully inadequate. A valet approached as they stepped out of the car. Zane awkwardly handed over the keys, explaining they'd arrived via rideshare. If the man judged him, he didn't show it, merely directing them toward the entrance where soft music and children's laughter spilled out. Ready? Zane asked Emma, straightening the collar of her favorite polka dot dress. She nodded solemnly, clutching the wrapped gift and her stuffed bunny with equal care. They were greeted at the door by a woman in a uniform who directed them to the backyard. As they stepped through the house, all sleek lines and museum-worthy art, Zane's discomfort grew. This was a mistake. They didn't belong here, among people who probably spent more on a dinner out than he made in a week. But then they reached the backyard, and Emma gasped with delight. The space had been transformed into a whimsical garden party. A bounce house shaped like a medieval castle dominated one side, while a petting zoo with gentle sheep and rabbits occupied another. Children of various ages played on a custom playground structure that would have put most public parks to shame. You came. Tessa's voice cut through his thoughts as she appeared beside them. She wore a simple sundress that probably cost more than his monthly rent, but her smile was genuine and warm. I was starting to worry. Sorry we're late, Zane apologized. "The rideshare took a wrong turn." "You should have let me send a car," Tessa said, then seemed to catch herself. "I'm just glad you're here, both of you." She crouched down to Emma's level. "Max has been asking about you. He's over by the bunny pen." Emma looked up at Zane for permission, and at his nod, she carefully handed him the gift and darted off toward the animals. "She's wonderful," Tessa observed, watching Emma go. "So independent." "She's had to be," Zane said, more candidly than he'd intended. "It's been just us since she was 1. Tessa led him to a quieter corner of the garden where a bar had been set up for the adults. "What happened? If you don't mind my asking." Zane accepted a glass of water from a bartender. Her mother decided parenting wasn't for her, left to find herself in Bali. He shrugged, the old pain dulled but never quite gone. "Last I heard, she's teaching yoga on the beach and living her best life, child-free." "I'm sorry," Tessa said, and the genuine empathy in her voice caught him off guard. "What about Max's father?" Zane asked, changing the subject. Something shuddered in Tessa's expression. Corporate merger gone wrong, you could say. He was more interested in Valda's innovations than in being a parent or partner. Once he realized I wouldn't hand over control of the company as a wedding gift, he lost interest in playing family man. "His loss," Zane said simply. Tessa studied him for a moment, then clinked her glass against his. "Exactly." For the next hour, Zane found himself drawn into Tessa's orbit. She introduced him to other parents, never once treating him differently despite the obvious economic divide. She laughed at his jokes, listened intently when he spoke about his contracting business, and seemed genuinely interested in his perspective on everything from parenting challenges to the best pizza in Portland. Watching her with Max and the other children, Zane saw beyond the CEO facade. Tessa was a hands-on mother, despite her demanding career, kneeling in grass in her expensive dress to help Max pet a rabbit, wiping ice cream from little faces without concern for her manicure, and remembering the names and preferences of each child. When it came time for cake, Zane found himself standing beside her, helping to herd excited toddlers toward the elaborate dinosaur-shaped creation. As Max blew out his candles with Tessa's help, Zane caught her eye over the flickering flames. The look they shared equal parts pride, exhaustion, and joy transcended their differences. Later, as the party wound down and children began leaving with goodie bags and balloon animals, Zane helped the staff collapse tables while Emma continued to play with Max and the few remaining children. "You don't have to do that," Tessa said, approaching with 2 cups of coffee. "I have people for cleanup." "Force of habit," Zane replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. "In my world, you pitch in where you can." Tessa sat on a nearby bench, patting the space beside her. "Your world sounds refreshingly straightforward." Zane joined her, aware of how out of place he must look in this pristine garden. "It's not always straightforward, but it's real. We get by." "Just getting by sounds appealing sometimes," Tessa admitted, her gaze drifting to where Max was showing Emma his new toys. "Do you know what I did last night after I saw you in the park?" Zane shook his head. "I had a 2-hour video conference with Tokyo, reviewed quarterly projections until midnight, then spent another hour answering emails before I could even think about birthday preparations." She took a sip of her coffee. "Sometimes I wonder if Max would be better off with a mother who worked normal hours, who could just be present." "Hey," Zane said gently. "I saw you today. You're an amazing mother. Max knows he's loved." Tessa's eyes glistened. "Thank you for that, and thank you for coming today." It meant a lot to Max, and to me. As the sun began to set over the bay, casting golden light across the garden, Zane found himself reluctant to leave. Emma and Max had become fast friends, playing some elaborate game involving the blue elephant and Emma's stuffed bunny. "When do you go back to Portland?" Tessa asked, breaking the comfortable silence between them. "Day after tomorrow," Zane replied. "Back to reality." Tessa nodded, disappointment flickering across her features before she composed herself. "Listen, I'm hosting a fundraiser dinner tomorrow night." Nothing fancy, just a few colleagues and friends supporting a literacy program I'm involved with. Would you and Emma like to come? My mother will be here watching Max, so Emma would have a playmate. Zane hesitated. I don't exactly have fundraiser attire packed. You look perfect just as you are, Tessa said with surprising sincerity. Then, catching herself, she added, but if you'd feel more comfortable, I could arrange something. Pride warred with practicality in Zane's mind. We have plans with my parents tomorrow, he said finally. It's their anniversary. Bring them too, Tessa suggested eagerly. The more the merrier. It's for a good cause getting books to underprivileged children. Perhaps it was the cause that swayed him, or the genuine hope in Tessa's eyes, or the way Emma had laughed more today than she had in months. Whatever the reason, Zane found himself nodding. I'll check with my parents, but yes, we'd like that. Tessa's smile was like sunrise breaking over the horizon, radiant and full of promise. Perfect, I'll send a car for you, 7 o'clock. As they gathered their things to leave, Max came running over, the blue elephant still clutched in his hand. He barreled into Zane's legs, looking up with wide eyes. Thank you for Leffant, he said solemnly. Zane crouched down to the boy's level. You're very welcome, buddy. Are you taking good care of him? Max nodded earnestly. He keeps the scary away. Something caught in Zane's throat as he recognized the same phrase he often used with Emma. That's exactly what he's supposed to do. As their rideshare pulled away from the mansion, Emma chattering excitedly about her new friend Max and the rabbits she'd petted, Zane found himself looking back at the house. Tessa stood in the doorway, Max on her hip, both of them waving. The image stayed with him long after they'd turned the corner and the house disappeared from view. I like Miss Tessa, Emma declared as they neared his parents' home. She gives good hugs and doesn't talk to me like I'm a baby. I like her too, Zane admitted, surprised by how true the words felt. Are we going to see her again tomorrow? Emma asked hopefully. Yes, Zane replied, wondering what exactly he was getting himself into. Yes, we are. The following evening found Zane standing in his parents' guest bathroom, adjusting the tie his father had lent him. The blue button-down shirt, as his mother had predicted, did bring out the blue in his eyes, and the slacks he'd packed for the flight home completed an outfit that was far from designer but presentable enough. You clean up nice, his mother said approvingly when he emerged. Very handsome. His father, already dressed in his best suit, nodded in agreement. That Tessa won't know what hit her. It's not like that, Zane protested, though a part of him wished it could be. She's just being kind. CEOs don't invite strangers to exclusive fundraisers out of mere kindness, his father pointed out. She's interested in you, son. Before Zane could argue further, Emma twirled into the room in a dress his mother had quickly altered from an old Easter outfit. Do I look pretty, Daddy? The prettiest, Zane affirmed, his heart swelling with love. Are you excited to see Max again? Emma nodded enthusiastically. And Miss Tessa. She promised to show me her fishies. She has a whole wall of them. The doorbell rang, announcing the arrival of the car Tessa had sent. As they made their way outside, Zane was startled to find not a taxi but a sleek black limousine waiting at the curb. Well, well, his father murmured appreciatively. Your friend doesn't do things by halves, does she? The driver opened the door for them, and Emma clambered in with a squeal of delight, followed by his parents who exchanged impressed glances. Zane took a deep breath before sliding in beside them, suddenly aware of how surreal this all felt. The ride to Pacific Heights was filled with Emma's excited observations about the limousine's features, and his parents' barely contained curiosity about Tessa. By the time they arrived at the now familiar glass and stone mansion, Zane's nerves had intensified. Unlike the previous day's casual welcome, tonight the entrance was lined with votive candles in glass holders, creating a warm, inviting path to the front door. A different staff member greeted them, taking their coats and directing them through to what could only be described as a great room. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the twinkling lights of the bay, while inside, Elegant flower arrangements and subtle lighting created an atmosphere of understated luxury. About 40 guests mingled throughout the space, most holding champagne flutes and engaged in animated conversation. Zane immediately felt out of place among the designer suits and cocktail dresses, but before he could retreat into his discomfort, Tessa appeared. She wore a simple black dress that skimmed her curves without being showy, her hair swept up in an elegant twist that highlighted her graceful neck. But it was her smile, warm and genuine as she caught sight of them, that truly took Zane's breath away. "You came," she said, reaching them with quick, purposeful steps. "I'm so glad." She greeted his parents with the same warmth she'd shown him, immediately putting them at ease with questions about their anniversary and genuine interest in their answers. When Emma tugged at her dress, Tessa crouched down without hesitation, heedless of the expensive fabric. "Max has been waiting for you," she told Emma. "He's upstairs with my mother and some other children. Would you like to join them?" At Emma's eager nod, Tessa signaled to a young woman nearby. "This is Lucia. She helps take care of Max. She'll show you where the fun is happening." After Emma had been whisked away, Tessa turned back to them. "Can I get you all something to drink? The bar is open, and dinner will be served in about 30 minutes. This is quite a place you have," Zane's father commented, clearly impressed by the surroundings. "Thank you, but it's just a house," Tessa replied with surprising modesty. "What makes it special is filling it with good people." She looked directly at Zane as she said this, and he felt something warm unfurl in his chest. As the evening progressed, Zane found himself drawn into conversations with Tessa's colleagues and friends. To his surprise, many were down to earth despite their wealth, passionate about the literacy program and genuinely interested in his perspective as a contractor who often worked in underserved communities. Dinner was served at elegantly appointed tables in the formal dining room. Zane found himself seated beside Tessa at the head table, his parents across from them, engaged in conversation with a retired English professor who shared their love of mystery novels. "How are you holding up?" Tessa asked quietly as servers presented the main course. "Better than I expected," Zane admitted. "Your friends aren't as intimidating as their bank accounts might suggest." Tessa laughed softly. "I don't surround myself with people who measure worth by wealth. That was my ex's domain." "Smart woman," Zane said, finding courage in the intimate moment. "Though I have to ask, why invite us? We're hardly part of your usual circle." Tessa's expression grew thoughtful. "Do you want the professional answer or the personal one?" "Both," Zane replied, his pulse quickening. "Professionally, you have invaluable perspective on the communities we're trying to serve with this literacy initiative. As a working parent, you understand the challenges in a way many of my colleagues simply can't." Zane nodded, waiting for the rest. "Personally." Tessa continued, her voice lowering. "I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that flight. The way you helped Max without judgment, how you speak to Emma as a person rather than a child, the fact that you didn't treat me differently when you realized who I was. It's refreshing, Zane." "You're refreshing." Before Zane could respond, one of the event organizers approached, requesting Tessa's assistance with the upcoming presentation. She squeezed his hand briefly before rising, the touch sending electricity through his veins. The fundraising portion of the evening was mercifully brief, but impactful. Tessa spoke with passion about the importance of early literacy, especially for children in circumstances where books were luxury items. As Zane watched her command the room with grace and conviction, he saw yet another facet of this remarkable woman, not just CEO or mother, but advocate and visionary. When she announced the total raised over $300,000, the room erupted in applause. Zane caught his parents exchanging impressed glances and felt a swell of something that might have been pride, though he had no right to it. As the formal program concluded and guests began to mingle again, Zane slipped away to check on Emma. Following Lucia's earlier directions, He made his way upstairs to a surprisingly cozy family room where several children were watching a movie under the supervision of an elegant older woman who could only be Tessa's mother. Emma and Max sat side by side on a pile of cushions, both clutching their respective stuffed animals. When Emma spotted him, she waved but made no move to leave, clearly content in her new friend's company. "You must be Zane," the older woman said, approaching with a knowing smile that reminded him instantly of Tessa. "I'm Millionaire Valdez. My daughter has told me about you." "All good things, I hope," Zane replied, suddenly nervous under her appraising gaze. "Very good things," Millionaire confirmed. "It's been a long time since I've seen Tessa invite a man to one of these events. Not since before Max was born." Zane wasn't sure how to respond to that revelation. "The children are fine," Millionaire assured him. "They're watching Finding Nemo and will probably fall asleep before it ends. You should go back and enjoy the party." As Zane turned to leave, Millionaire added, "My daughter works too hard. It's nice to see her smile the way she does when she talks about you." Returning downstairs, Zane found the gathering had shifted to a more relaxed tone. Someone was playing the grand piano in the corner, and several guests had moved to the terrace, despite the cool evening air. He located his parents deep in conversation with a couple who, he later learned, were foundation directors interested in expanding literacy programs to rural areas. His father, a retired school principal, was in his element. "There you are," Tessa's voice came from behind him. She held 2 glasses of wine, offering one to him. "Come with me, I want to show you something." She led him through a doorway he hadn't noticed before, down a short hallway, and into what appeared to be a home office. But it wasn't the sleek desk or state-of-the-art computer setup that captured his attention. It was the wall of built-in aquariums that Emma had mentioned, filled with vibrant tropical fish of every color imaginable. "This is incredible," Zane said, moving closer to the glass. The soft bubbling of filters and gentle movement of the fish created an atmosphere of tranquility that seemed at odds with the high-powered executive image Tessa projected. "It's my sanctuary," Tessa admitted, setting her wine down on a side table. "When the pressure gets too intense, or I miss Max during long workdays, I come in here and watch them. There's something soothing about their world, so complete, so contained, yet so vibrant." Zane turned to face her, struck by the vulnerability in her expression. In the blue glow from the aquariums, she looked younger, less guarded. "Thank you for sharing this with me," he said quietly. "I wanted you to see a piece of the real me," Tessa replied. "Not the CEO or the hostess or even Max's mom, just me." The moment hung between them, fragile and charged with possibility. Zane set his own glass down, gathering courage. "The real you is pretty spectacular," he said, his voice low. Tessa stepped closer, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something subtle and elegant that made him think of rain and flowers. "So is the real you," she whispered. When their lips met, it felt both inevitable and surprising. The kiss was gentle at first, exploratory, then deepening as Tessa's hands came up to rest against his chest. Zane cupped her face carefully, as if she might break or disappear if he held too tightly. They pulled apart slowly, both slightly breathless. Tessa's eyes, reflecting the blue light from the aquariums, searched his face. "I don't do this," she said softly. "I don't invite men I barely know to my events or kiss them in my office." "I don't typically kiss millionaire CEOs either," Zane replied with a small smile, "but I'm not complaining." A laugh bubbled up from Tessa, breaking the tension. "This is crazy, isn't it? We live in different worlds, different cities." "Maybe," Zane acknowledged, his hands still resting lightly on her waist. "Or maybe we just live in different neighborhoods of the same world." Tessa's expression softened. "I'd like to believe that." A discreet knock at the door had them stepping apart just as a staff member appeared to inform Tessa that some guests were preparing to leave and asking for her. "Duty calls," she said regretfully. Zane nodded in understanding. "Go be the amazing hostess I know you are. I'll be here." As Tessa left to attend to her guests, Zane turned back to the aquariums, watching the fish dart and weave through their underwater landscape. He tried to process what had just happened, what it might mean, and whether he was setting himself up for heartbreak by even entertaining possibilities with someone so far removed from his daily reality. But his thoughts kept returning to the feeling of her lips on his, the look in her eyes when she'd shown him her sanctuary, and the undeniable connection that had sparked between them on that airplane and only grown stronger since. By the time the last guest had departed, and his parents had been persuaded to take the limousine home with a sleepy Emma, after much meaningful glancing between them when Tessa suggested Zane might stay a bit longer. Zane found himself alone with Tessa in her kitchen. She had changed from her elegant dress into yoga pants and a soft sweater, her hair now loose around her shoulders, makeup slightly smudged from the long evening. She looked more beautiful to him this way than she had in her perfect fundraiser attire. Wine, she offered, pulling a bottle from a temperature-controlled cabinet. I'm more of a beer guy, Zane admitted, but I'll try whatever you're having. Tessa smiled and returned the wine, opening the refrigerator instead to produce 2 bottles of a local craft brew. I keep these for my brother when he visits. Will this work? Zane accepted the bottle with a grin. Perfect. They moved to the family room where earlier the children had watched their movie. The cushions were still arranged in a nest-like formation, and a few forgotten toys lay scattered on the carpet. Sorry for the mess, Tessa said, bending to pick up a stuffed dinosaur. This isn't mess, Zane laughed. This is normal. You should see my living room most nights. They settled on the couch, a comfortable distance apart yet close enough to feel the warmth between them. Can I ask you something? Tessa said after a moment of companionable silence. Zane nodded, taking a sip of his beer. What happened with your contracting business? You mentioned budget cuts, changing your phone plan. Is everything okay? The question, asked without pity or judgment, caught Zane off guard with its directness. The honest answer, it's been a rough year, he admitted. I had a major client default on payment for a big renovation project. Nearly wiped me out. I've been rebuilding slowly, taking on smaller jobs, being careful about who I work with. Tessa listened intently, her expression thoughtful. That's not easy, especially with a child depending on you. Emma never goes without the important stuff, Zane said firmly. But yeah, luxuries like this trip to see my parents, those have been rare lately. You're a good father, Tessa said softly. Max adores you already, and I can see why. You have this steadiness, this authentic strength that has nothing to do with bank accounts or status. Zane felt warmth spread through his chest that had nothing to do with the beer. You're not so bad yourself. Max is lucky to have a mother who cares so deeply, who works so hard to give him everything. Sometimes I wonder if everything is too much, Tessa confessed, setting her bottle down on a coaster. If all the advantages I can provide will somehow make him less resilient, less appreciative of what really matters. That depends entirely on you, Zane replied. If you teach him gratitude and perspective alongside privilege, he'll be fine. He paused, then added with a smile, and if you ever need help with that, Emma gives excellent lessons in appreciating the small things. Tessa laughed, the sound filling the room with warmth. I'd like that. I'd like Emma to be in Max's life, and you in. She hesitated, vulnerability flashing across her features. In mine. The admission hung between them, honest and raw. I'd like that too, Zane said quietly, but I live in Portland, you're here, you run a major company. I'm struggling to keep my small business afloat. How would this even work? Tessa moved closer, her hand finding his on the couch cushion between them. I don't know yet, but I'm good at solving complex problems. It's kind of my specialty. Is that what I am? A complex problem? Zane teased, though there was genuine question beneath his words. No, Tessa said seriously. You're the most uncomplicated, refreshingly straightforward man I've ever met, and that's exactly why I can't stop thinking about you. Zane set his beer aside, turning to face her fully. I fly back to Portland tomorrow. I know, Tessa replied, her fingers intertwining with his, but San Francisco and Portland aren't so far apart, and I happen to own a private jet. Zane raised his eyebrows and Tessa laughed at his expression. Too much, she asked. A little, he admitted with a grin. Maybe we start with phone calls and work our way up to private jets. Deal, Tessa agreed, leaning forward until her forehead rested against his. But the offer stands. Whenever you want to see me, whenever Emma wants to see Max, just say the word. Their second kiss was deeper than the first, filled with promise and possibility. When they finally parted, Zane felt as though something fundamental had shifted in his universe, as if all the struggles and setbacks of the past years had been leading him to this moment, this woman, this unexpected connection. Stay, Tessa whispered against his lips. Just stay. It's late, and I have a guest room, and I'm not ready to say goodbye yet. Zane nodded, knowing he wasn't ready either. I should call my parents, let them know. His father answered on the first ring, as if he'd been waiting by the phone. When Zane explained he'd be staying at Tessa's and returning in the morning, the knowing MMHMM on the other end of the line made him roll his eyes. It's not like that, Dad. We're just talking. Sure you are, son, his father replied, amusement evident in his voice. Emma's fast asleep and your mother's already planning what to wear to the wedding. Dad, Zane groaned. I'm kidding, mostly. Take your time, we'll see you tomorrow. After hanging up, Zane found Tessa waiting with a soft smile. Everything okay? Yeah, he replied, returning her smile. My dad thinks you're after my body, but otherwise fine. Tessa laughed, the sound bubbling up spontaneously. Well, I won't deny you're attractive, but I was thinking we could start with more talking. Maybe some dessert. I have this ridiculous chocolate soufflé that the caterer left in the warming drawer. Now you're speaking my language, Zane said, following her back to the kitchen. They spent hours talking over dessert and more beer, sharing stories of their childhoods, their journeys to parenthood, their hopes and fears for their children. Zane told her about his ex-wife's departure and the dark months that followed, when he'd had to learn to be both mother and father to a confused toddler while keeping his business from collapsing. Tessa shared the pressure of taking over her father's company at 28 after his sudden heart attack, proving herself in a male-dominated industry while fighting off hostile takeover attempts, including the one orchestrated by Max's father, who'd seen marriage to her as a business strategy rather than a partnership. I never thought I'd trust anyone enough to try again, she admitted, as the conversation turned more intimate. Especially not someone I met on an airplane. Life has a funny way of surprising you when you least expect it, Zane replied, thinking of how a crying toddler had somehow led him to this moment. When fatigue finally overtook them in the early hours of the morning, Tessa showed him to a guest suite that was larger than his entire apartment in Portland. The bed was made up with linens that probably cost more than his monthly mortgage payment, but it was the small touches that caught his attention: a glass of water on the nightstand, a new toothbrush in the en-suite bathroom, a phone charger beside the bed. You think of everything, he commented as she lingered in the doorway. I try, Tessa replied. Sleep well, Zane. You too, he said, resisting the urge to pull her into the room with him. Whatever was developing between them deserved time and care, not rushed intimacy. As he lay in the luxurious bed, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling, Zane tried to process the whirlwind of the past few days. From a chance encounter on a flight to whatever this was becoming, it felt both impossibly fast and somehow exactly right. Morning arrived with the aroma of coffee and the sound of children's laughter drifting up from downstairs. Zane dressed quickly in yesterday's clothes, running a hand through his sleep-tousled hair before making his way toward the sounds of life. He found Tessa in the kitchen, barefoot in pajama pants and a Stanford sweatshirt, making pancakes while Max, and to his surprise, Emma sat at the counter helping to mix batter. Daddy? Emma exclaimed when she spotted him. Miss Tessa makes pancakes shaped like animals. "Good morning," Tessa greeted him with a warm smile. "Your parents dropped her off about an hour ago. I hope that's okay. They said they had some shopping to do and would be back around noon." Zane recognized his parents' transparent attempt at matchmaking, but couldn't find it in himself to be annoyed. Not when Emma looked so happy perched beside Max, both of them dusted with flour and giggling conspiratorially. "It's more than okay," he assured her, accepting the mug of coffee she offered. "Need any help?" For the next hour, they moved around each other in the kitchen with surprising ease, Zane flipping pancakes while Tessa cut fruit. Emma and Max setting the table with plastic plates and only minimal squabbling over who got which color. It felt domestic in a way Zane hadn't experienced since before his ex-wife left this sense of family, of shared purpose, of simple joy in everyday moments. Watching Tessa laugh as she helped Max pour syrup, seeing Emma demonstrate her best pancake bite technique to an attentive audience, Zane could almost imagine this being real, being permanent. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, it filled him with quiet hope. After breakfast, while the children returned to playing upstairs, Zane helped Tessa clean up. Their hands brushed as they loaded the dishwasher, and Tessa caught his, holding it gently. "I have a confession," she said, her expression suddenly serious. Zane's heart stuttered. "Okay." "I have meetings in Portland next week. 3 days of boring acquisition discussions that I've been dreading." Relief mixed with excitement as Zane realized what she was saying. "What a coincidence." "Isn't it?" Tessa replied, her eyes sparkling. "I was thinking, if you're not too busy with work, maybe we could have dinner, or lunch, or breakfast." Her confidence faltered slightly. "All of the above." Zane pulled her closer, one hand coming up to brush a strand of hair from her face. "I think my schedule just cleared up completely." Their kiss was interrupted by the sound of small feet pattering into the kitchen, followed by Max's voice. "Mommy, why are you kissing Emma's daddy?" They broke apart to find Max and Emma watching them with identical expressions of curious confusion. "Because," Tessa said after a moment, crouching down to Max's level, "sometimes when grown-ups like each other very much, they kiss to show it." "Like in the movies?" Emma asked, her head tilted thoughtfully. "Something like that," Zane confirmed, moving to stand beside Tessa. Max considered this information seriously. "Does this mean Emma can come play again?" Tessa laughed, ruffling her son's hair. "Yes, sweetheart, I think Emma will be coming to play quite a lot." Emma's face lit up. "And Max can come to our house too." Then, remembering their small apartment, she added with slight hesitation, "But we don't have a bouncy castle." "That's okay," Max said solemnly. "I can bring my elephant." As the children ran off, satisfied with this arrangement, Zane turned to Tessa. "This is crazy, isn't it?" "We've known each other for 3 days. 4 if you count the flight," Tessa corrected with a smile. "And yes, it's completely crazy." Her expression softened as she took his hand again, but some of the best things in life are. When Zane's parents arrived to collect him and Emma for their flight back to Portland that afternoon, they found the 4 of them, Zane, Tessa, Emma, and Max, building an elaborate fort out of couch cushions and blankets in the family room. The adults were laughing as hard as the children, their hair mussed and clothes rumpled from crawling through blanket tunnels. The knowing looks his parents exchanged didn't escape Zane's notice, nor did his mother's barely contained smile when Tessa insisted on seeing them off personally, accompanying them all the way to the airport in her own car rather than sending the limousine. At the security checkpoint, the moment of goodbye arrived too quickly. Emma hugged Max fiercely, making him promise to take care of Stompy the elephant. Zane's parents tactfully moved ahead to give him and Tessa a moment alone. Portland. "Next week," Zane confirmed, holding both her hands in his. "Wednesday through Friday," Tessa replied. "I'll text you my hotel information." "Or you could stay with us," Zane offered, then immediately backpedaled. "I mean, not like, I have a pull-out couch, or I could take the couch, whatever you're comfortable with." Tessa silenced his rambling with a quick kiss. Let's figure it out day by day. No pressure, no expectations, just possibility. Zane nodded, squeezing her hands before releasing them. I like the sound of that. As he walked through security, Emma skipping ahead to join her grandparents, Zane glanced back to find Tessa still watching, Max balanced on her hip. They both waved, and the image burned itself into his memory, something to hold onto in the days ahead, a promise of what might be. The next week passed in a blur of work for Zane, punctuated by nightly phone calls with Tessa that often stretched into the early hours of the morning. They talked about everything and nothing: her meetings, his current renovation project, Max's latest obsession with dinosaurs, Emma's progress in preschool. Each conversation deepened their connection, confirming what they'd both felt from the beginning, that, despite their different circumstances, they shared core values, similar parenting philosophies, and a vision of life that aligned in all the ways that mattered. By the time Wednesday arrived, Zane found himself nervously cleaning his modest apartment for the third time, though Tessa had insisted on staying at her hotel. For now, she'd added with a hint of promise in her voice. Their reunion at a small Italian restaurant near the waterfront felt both surreal and completely natural. Tessa arrived in business attire, clearly coming straight from meetings, but the professional facade melted away as soon as she spotted him waiting at the table. "Hi," she said simply, her smile transforming her face. "Hi yourself," Zane replied, standing to greet her. After a moment's hesitation, he leaned in to kiss her cheek, breathing in her familiar perfume. The evening passed in a haze of good food, better conversation, and lingering touches across the table. They shared a dessert, their forks occasionally battling for the last bite of tiramisu, laughing like teenagers on a first date. When they finally left the restaurant, neither ready to say goodnight, they walked along the waterfront, Tessa's hand finding its way into his as naturally as if they'd been doing this for years instead of days. "How were your meetings?" Zane asked, their breath forming clouds in the cool Portland night. "Productive but exhausting," Tessa replied. "The acquisition is going through, which means Valda's Innovations will now have a permanent Portland office." Zane stopped walking, turning to face her. "You're opening an office here." Tessa nodded, her expression a mixture of professional pride and personal hope. "We've been planning it for months, but now it's official. I'll need to be here at least once a month for the foreseeable future." "That's convenient," Zane said, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Isn't it?" Tessa agreed, stepping closer until they were sharing the same breath. "Almost like the universe is conspiring in our favor." Their kiss was deeper this time, unhurried and filled with promise. When they finally broke apart, Tessa's eyes remained closed for a moment, as if savoring the sensation. "I should get back to the hotel," she said reluctantly. "Early meeting tomorrow." "I'll walk you," Zane offered, his arms sliding around her waist. At the hotel entrance, they lingered again, neither wanting the evening to end. Finally, Tessa pressed another quick kiss to his lips before stepping away. "Tomorrow?" she asked. "Tomorrow," Zane confirmed. "I'm taking you to the best food trucks in the city for lunch, real Portland experience." Tessa's laugh followed him as he walked away, a sound he was quickly coming to treasure. The next 2 days passed in a similar fashion-stolen moments between Tessa's meetings and Zane's work commitments, shared meals, and increasingly passionate goodbyes at her hotel door. By Friday evening, when Emma joined them for dinner at a family-friendly restaurant near Zane's apartment, it felt as though Tessa had always been part of their lives. Watching his daughter explain the intricacies of her favorite cartoon to an attentive Tessa, Zane felt something settle in his chest, a certainty that had been building since that first day on the airplane. "Stay," he said quietly when they reached his apartment door after dinner, Emma already half asleep against his shoulder. I mean just stay, watch a movie with us, I'm not ready to say goodbye yet." The echo of Tessa's words from the week before wasn't lost on either of them. She smiled, nodding as she followed them inside. His apartment, with its mismatched furniture and walls in need of fresh paint, was a far cry from her Pacific Heights mansion. But Tessa settled onto his worn couch as if it were the most comfortable place in the world, accepting the glass of wine he offered with genuine appreciation. Emma, revived by the excitement of having a guest, insisted on showing Tessa her room, her toys, her collection of rocks from the park. Tessa followed with authentic interest, asking questions and admiring each treasure as if it were a priceless artifact. By the time they settled in to watch a movie Emma's choice, an animated feature about talking animals, the three of them fit together on the couch like pieces of a puzzle that had always belonged together. Emma fell asleep halfway through, curled against Tessa's side like a small, trusting cat. Zane watched as Tessa absently stroked his daughter's hair, her attention still on the movie but her body language completely relaxed, completely at home. "She likes you," Zane said softly, not wanting to wake Emma. Tessa smiled, looking down at the sleeping child. "The feeling is mutual." "She's extraordinary, Zane. You've done an amazing job with her." "We do okay," he replied, his chest tight with emotion. "She makes it easy most days." When the movie ended, Zane carefully lifted Emma and carried her to bed, tucking her in and placing a gentle kiss on her forehead. When he returned to the living room, Tessa was standing by the window, looking out at the modest view of the neighborhood. "I should go," she said, though her tone suggested she wanted anything but, "My flight's at noon tomorrow." Zane moved to stand behind her, his hands coming to rest lightly on her shoulders. "Or you could stay. The couch pulls out. Or, Tessa turned to face him, her eyes searching his. "Or not the couch," Zane finished, his voice low. The kiss that followed was different from their previous ones, deeper, more urgent, filled with a week's worth of restrained desire. Tessa's hands slid into his hair, pulling him closer as his arms encircled her waist. "Emma," she whispered against his lips. "Sleeps like a rock," Zane assured her, already leading her toward his bedroom. "But we'll be quiet, just in case." The night that followed was everything Zane had imagined during their week apart and more. Tessa's body fit against his, as if designed for him alone, her sighs and whispered encouragements guiding him as they explored each other with equal parts tenderness and passion. Afterward, lying together in the darkness with Tessa's head resting on his chest, Zane felt a completeness he'd thought lost to him forever after his marriage ended. "What are we doing?" he asked softly, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. Tessa propped herself up on one elbow, her hair falling in a curtain around them. "I think," she said carefully, "we're falling in love." The simple honesty of her statement took his breath away. "That's crazy," he replied, but his smile betrayed him. "We've known each other less than 2 weeks." "Sometimes you just know," Tessa said, her fingertips tracing the line of his jaw. "I've spent my entire career making split-second decisions worth millions based on intuition backed by evidence. This feels like that, except the stakes are much, much higher." Zane caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "So what's your decision, CEO Valdez?" Tessa's smile was luminous even in the dim light. "That this is worth pursuing. That distance and differences don't matter as much as what we feel when we're together. That I want to see where this goes, even if it's complicated and messy and completely terrifying." "I concur with your assessment," Zane replied with mock seriousness before pulling her down for another kiss. When morning came, bringing with it the soft patter of Emma's feet in the hallway, they were ready. Tessa, dressed in one of Zane's t-shirts and her slacks from the day before, greeted Emma's surprised delight at finding her at the breakfast table with easy grace. Miss Tessa had a sleepover, Emma announced, climbing onto a chair. "That's right," Zane confirmed, exchanging a glance with Tessa. "Is that okay with you?" Emma considered this seriously as she accepted the bowl of cereal Zane placed before her. "Does this mean you're Daddy's girlfriend now?" Tessa nearly choked on her coffee but recovered quickly. "Would that be all right if I was?" Emma nodded decisively. "Yes, you make Daddy smile and you're pretty, and Max likes you, so you must be nice." "High praise indeed," Zane commented, unable to contain his grin. "Then yes," Tessa said, her eyes finding Zane's over Emma's head. "I would very much like to be your daddy's girlfriend." The months that followed established a rhythm to their unconventional relationship. Tessa's New Portland office meant regular visits, sometimes with Max in tow for playdates that delighted both children. On weekends, when Tessa couldn't come to Portland, Zane and Emma would fly to San Francisco, initially on commercial flights, despite Tessa's protests, but eventually relenting to the private jet when scheduling became complicated. Zane's contracting business began to flourish again, partly due to connections made through Tessa, but mostly through his own hard work and reputation for quality. He insisted on maintaining his financial independence, turning down Tessa's offers of investment, but accepting her referrals to clients who needed renovation work. Their different worlds gradually began to merge, Zane finding comfort in the luxury of Tessa's life, while helping her appreciate the simple pleasures he and Emma valued. Tessa bringing opportunities and experiences to Zane and Emma while embracing the groundedness they offered her and Max. 6 months into their relationship, as spring bloomed across both Portland and San Francisco, Tessa approached Zane with a proposition. "I've been thinking," she began one evening as they sat on the deck of her San Francisco home, watching Emma and Max chase fireflies in the garden below. "About us, about our situation." Zane felt a flicker of concern at her serious tone. "Okay, the commuting is getting complicated," Tessa continued, "for all of us, and the children are so attached to each other now, not just to us." "What are you suggesting?" Zane asked carefully. Tessa took a deep breath. "I want us to live together, all of us, but I know your business is in Portland, your parents are there, Emma's preschool. So you want us to move to San Francisco?" Zane clarified, his mind already calculating the practical challenges. "No," Tessa replied, surprising him. "I want to buy a house in Portland, a place big enough for all of us, where I can work remotely most of the time and only commute to San Francisco when absolutely necessary." Zane stared at her, processing the magnitude of what she was proposing. "You do that? Move your whole life for us." Tessa reached for his hand. "Zane, you and Emma are my life now. You and Emma and Max. The company is important, but family comes first, and we are a family, aren't we? Even if it's unconventional and happened at warp speed." The certainty in her voice, the love in her eyes, dissolved any doubts Zane might have harbored. "Yes," he said simply, "we are a family. But," he added after a moment, "I can't let you buy a house for us, that's too much." Tessa started to protest, but he held up a hand. "How about this, we find a place together? I contribute what I can. Maybe I renovate it myself, add sweat equity, but it has to feel like ours, not just yours that we're living in." The compromise satisfied them both, and within weeks, they found a neglected craftsman-style home in one of Portland's established neighborhoods. The house needed significant work, exactly the kind of challenge Zane thrived on, but had excellent bones and enough space for their blended family, plus a home office for Tessa. Throughout the summer, Zane worked tirelessly on the renovation while maintaining his client projects. Tessa divided her time between San Francisco and Portland, Max and Emma becoming inseparable companions who weathered the transitions with resilience that amazed both parents. By autumn, the house was ready for them to move in together officially. Zane had restored the craftsman's original features while updating systems and adding modern amenities. Tessa had furnished it with a blend of pieces from her San Francisco home and new items they'd chosen together, creating a space that reflected both their tastes. On moving day, as Zane carried the last box into what was now their shared bedroom, he found Tessa standing by the window, looking out at the maple tree in the backyard where Emma and Max were playing under his parents' watchful eyes. "Having second thoughts?" he asked, setting the box down. Tessa turned, her expression serene. "Not a single one. You," Zane crossed the room to stand beside her. "Only one," he said, reaching into his pocket. "I've been thinking we got this all backward." Tessa's brow furrowed in confusion until Zane dropped to one knee, producing a small velvet box. Her hands flew to her mouth as he opened it to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring. "It's not as extravagant as you deserve," he began, his voice husky with emotion. "But it was my grandmother's, and my mom insisted you should have it." "Zane," Tessa whispered, tears filling her eyes. "Tessa Valdez," he continued, "you came into our lives when I least expected it, when a crying toddler on an airplane seemed like the biggest challenge of my day. Instead, it turned out to be the greatest gift." He took a breath, his eyes never leaving hers. "I love you. Emma loves you. We want you and Max to be our family officially forever. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Tessa said without hesitation, tears now streaming freely down her face. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." As Zane slipped the ring onto her finger and rose to take her in his arms, they heard the patter of small feet racing up the stairs. "Did you ask her, Daddy?" Emma's voice preceded her as she burst into the room, Max close behind. "Did Miss Tessa say yes?" Zane lifted Emma into his arms while Tessa scooped up Max. "She did say yes," Zane confirmed, his heart so full it felt like it might burst. "Is that okay with you two?" "Yay," Emma cheered, throwing her arms around both adults. "Now we can be a real family." "We already were, sweetheart," Tessa said, her voice thick with emotion as she looked from Emma to Max to Zane. "Now it's just official." That evening, as the children slept in their new rooms and Zane's parents retired to the guest suite they would occupy, until returning to their own home the next day, Zane and Tessa sat on the porch swing of their new home, a blanket draped over their laps against the autumn chill. "I never thought I'd find this," Tessa said softly, her head resting on Zane's shoulder, her engagement ring catching the light from the porch lamp. "After Max's father, I convinced myself that success meant being alone, being strong on my own. And I thought after Emma's mom left that I'd never trust anyone enough to try again," Zane admitted, his arm tightening around her. "Funny how life surprises you." "All because of a crying toddler on an airplane," Tessa mused, laughter in her voice. "And a blue elephant named Stompy," Zane added. Tessa lifted her head to look at him, her eyes reflecting all the love he felt. "I'm so glad you came to our rescue that day." "I'm glad you let me," Zane replied, leaning in to kiss her softly. As their lips met, sealing their commitment to the future they were building together, Zane marveled at how sometimes the most unexpected encounters could lead to the most perfect destinations, and how a moment of kindness shown to a crying child had opened the door to the greatest love of his life. In the years that followed, their family grew stronger through the inevitable challenges of merging lives, parenting styles, and expectations. Tessa continued to run Valdez Innovations, though she restructured the company to allow for more remote work and family time. Zane's contracting business expanded into a respected renovation firm specializing in historic properties, his talent finally receiving the recognition and compensation it deserved. Emma and Max thrived as siblings, their different personalities complementing rather than clashing. When 2 years after their wedding, Tessa and Zane welcomed twin girls into their family, the older children embraced their roles as big sister and brother with enthusiasm and pride. On quiet evenings, when the children were asleep and the house settled into peaceful stillness, Tessa and Zane would sometimes recall that first meeting on the airplane, how a moment of simple human kindness had changed the trajectory of all their lives. And somewhere in Max's room, tucked among more expensive toys and treasures, a well-loved blue elephant named Stompy still held a place of honor, a small but significant reminder that sometimes the smallest gestures can lead to the greatest happiness.